Welcome to CivilNet. My guest is Armen Orujyan, founding CEO of the Foundation for Armenian Science and Technology, also known as the FAST Foundation. As the name of the foundation suggests, FAST aims to catalyze scientific advancement and technological innovation in Armenia. Thank you, Mr. Orujyan, for joining us today.
With pleasure. Thanks for having me over.
So FAST is based on three pillars. It's education, research, and commercialization. They are so closely intertwined that they require a solid public-private relationship. The government is the public part, and education is completely within the government sphere. So how is your partnership with the government, and how has that evolved over these 5 years?
It's a process when it comes to such a integral vertical as is education. Every stakeholder is involved. Public, private, and constituents as well, naturally, because you don't want to make a decision without them being part of the process. It's been a learning curve as to how the changes or adjustments that we would want to enact in education would take place in Armenia. We started with smaller programs, testing them, boot camps, 6-month-old programs, year-long programs, mostly focused on coursework that will enhance people's skill set when it comes to working in the space of artificial intelligence and subsets of machine learning, deep learning. So we teach advanced mathematics, machine learning, deep learning, NLPs, and whatever else is necessary for us to ensure that our young people have the skill set for them to have competitive education to produce whether it's going to be scientific advancement or technological innovation. It would be in par with the norms around the globe, not just in Armenia. Now we, over the past years, after testing and iterating, we have a few models that we're prepared to scale, and now we're working with the government on the scaling of these. We're in advanced phases of discussions with the Ministry of Education, Science, Sports and Culture to have a pilot later this year. If everything goes according to the plan, sometime around fall of this year, we'll have at least one of the programs that will go into 12 high schools. It will start at the 11th grade, or part of the 11th grade, all the way through the 12th grade. Again, it will be adjustment to just general curriculum, as well adjustment to teachers and faculty retraining, as well as additional faculty to train some of advanced courses that would be required that are not currently available in high schools. So having said that, I think our experience with the government has been positive thus far in terms of understanding why this is important. I think we are speaking the same language. A lot of work still needs to be done. We are months away until the implementation of this, but I think thus far it seems like we are on the path together.
One of the foundation's motto is "Let's put Armenia on the world innovation map together." And as we already said, one of your goals is commercialization, which requires access to markets, intellectual property rights, and it is dependent on consistent, reliable research processes that will lead to products or services that can be commercialized. But innovation and research in most countries receive serious government support. And what is the situation in Armenia, and what is FAST's role in that relationship?
Commercialization is one of the key element of the ecosystem that will drive scientific advancement. At the end of the process of knowing what the science is or being able to extend it, we also ask a question, and anyone should always ask a question: what's the end of the road? How does it apply to the general public? And that's where the role of entrepreneurs and commercial enterprises, or enterprises that commercialize scientific advancement, those come in. For us, we've done a number of different types of programs, from incubation to acceleration to venture building, and I think some we've had really good successes, others not so much, so we scrapped them. It was a learning process for us as to what will work in the environment that we are in, and also based on those critical ingredients that you just mentioned. Where we are with research, be it fundamental research or applied research, what types of resources are there, also human resources, not only financial resources, but do we have the right capacity for us to be able to do high level and then growing, which is also important, because you can start something, but if you don't have the human capacity to scale, very quickly need to either be acquired or you need to leave the country for you to be able to expand when it comes to your human resources. So those strains are felt by everyone in the marketplace. It's not something unique to FAST. We understand it. We see that the government has been listening to the communities by increasing at least, significant for the side of the government, increasing the budget for fundamental research in Armenia. Still, a lot of work needs to be done on that front as well. We're nowhere near what the OECD average would be, nowhere near what the requirements would be. Having said that, we need to go back to education here again. So it's not only investment in private sector or investment in opportunities in the research and science. That must be done, unquestionable. And there is no but. So this is not going to follow, we need to do it, but it needs to be done. Yet, we need to start way sooner. We need to have growing numbers of people that would want to go into scientific discipline. If you look at the data now, for the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a steady decline of people getting into space of STEM, and that's where we need to have numbers growing when it comes to PhD candidates or PhDs, for us to be able to really process and bring new inventions and new innovations. You mentioned about IP. We need to create intellectual properties. We don't do that very well in Armenia. The numbers are extremely low. They're not a part of any conversation, and that's any real serious conversation when it comes to global innovation. Having 3 to 5 international patents a year, and that's been the average since the last 5 years in Armenia. If we have 3 to 5 international patents in Armenia, countries like Denmark, I'm not even going to go to Israel and others, countries like Denmark, closer in size, they produce in several thousands. We're not even doing well when it comes to our numbers with our regional partners or regional adversaries, so to say. We're almost at the lowest level. So there needs to be a lot of work that needs to be done there. Yet again, I want to emphasize, I think the most critical thing is the education here. We need to spend a lot of time in understanding. This is not only, let's just carpet spend, like carpet bomb, but carpet spend money on education. We really need to understand what is that new way of bringing education to our younger population, to our youth, for them to really get the competitive education. Because if we're going to try to do step by step, brick on brick, it will take us decades, if not longer, for us to catch up with just average educational systems around the world. Our human index, we're number 85 in the world, meaning capacity that we would have as a country for us to excel. 85 is not a pretty picture for anyone, and for us, knowing that we have the potential, we could use the potential for us to grow and create a competitive environment when it comes to scientific discovery, scientific advancement, or technological innovation. Having the 85th on this index is really a very challenging position to be in. So we need to go back to basics, essentially. See what we can do in K-12, what we can do in a higher education. That's one side of the problem we need to look at. Second, another very critical thing. So if you're a child, you're looking at the future and you say, you know what, I want to become a scientist, then you need to assess, if you want to become a scientist, can you really feed the family that you're going to be, growing and building, hopefully, right? And when you look at average salaries now, there is increase in 2022, there will be more increase in 2025, so those are good news. But when you start comparing that when it comes to regionally, how much on an average are salaries for scientists regionally, you see that we may be doing better than Turkey, for instance, and we are. But where we're lagging is our Eastern European partners, and we're not even speaking about Western reality. So when you look at that, those types of challenges that you have, and then you ask a question whether a child or a teenager or a high school student or a early stage, college student would consider going to scientific space, if they're really doing evaluation or if their parents are doing evaluation today, it's not looking good. You have to do these in parallel. It's like deal with the education, how you're going to adjust education for it to become competitive, as well as to look at what type of new solutions you can come up in research and commercialization, meaning applied research and fundamental research for these people wanting to go into scientific space.
Would you say that the government, or at least there's a raise of awareness that there is an urgent need to do something quickly and structurally to change the whole educational system to get to this result?
Let's agree, Ani. Let's agree that there is an awareness. So that's number one. You need to be aware for you to be able to know that you have a problem. So that's number one. Great. Let's agree that there is an awareness. I don't want to say one way or the other because it's going to be speculation, right? Because I'm going to be speaking on behalf of people that whether I know, I don't know, the level of their awareness is for them to know. So instead of speculating, let's just agree. Let's just give the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, there is this understanding. There is consciousness that we need to. Defining the actual problem beyond consciousness, defining the actual problem, number one, and understanding how to resolve that problem. So setting the right hypotheses is critical here. Not just to say, so if we do a survey, we say anyone, general public, government, it doesn't matter. We say, is education important? Everyone will say yes. The minute you ask why, then the response decreases tremendously because people will say, well, because it's important. But really, education is the fundamental element upon which human species is different than any other species. And human species within its own kind of species is different than anyone else, right? So that fundamental element, I don't think there is at least global awareness in Armenia that is number one issue. There is no other issue. There is absolutely no other issue. No other issue that is as important as education in this country, even today. We confuse what our adversary or what others would want us to think what's most important for us. So we immediately start thinking about security issues. We've been thinking of security issues for the last 30 years, and we've been thinking of security issues for probably about a millennia. I'm not even saying, this 3 years, this 30 years, this 100 years, but probably a millennia. As long as you have a pain point like that, it's very difficult for you to focus on real stuff, the real problem that you have. And the real problem that we have is education. The modern world, the modern security requires extreme intelligence. For you to be able to battle that, for you to be able to defend from that, for you to be able to also to have the upper hand. You need to have extreme intelligence. There's two ways to do this. One is you buy extreme intelligence, and you hope with your limited understanding you're going to end up knowing what's that real extreme intelligence. Or second, for you to be the producer of that. When you have limited resources, buying is not an option. So the only thing you're left with is for you to build it, for you to develop it. But in order for you to develop it, you really, really critically need to understand the lag and the limitations and restrictions that you have when it comes to the fundamental part of it, which is, you know, how educated are you? What is your system that's going to produce that intelligence that you'll be able to be competitive? And I don't think that general awareness exists, be it in public, be it in many circles, whether public or private.
So now we talked about all the issues and lacks in Armenia. Let's say, are there specific areas where Armenia excels? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain. What is our competitive advantage?
Competitive advantage, if we're looking with the rest of the world just in general, yeah, we can come up with all sorts of competitive advantages. On the innovation index, we're somewhere around 60 around the world. So we're not competing with, you know, all the nations that we like to compare ourselves with. Do we want to compete and say we have competitive advantage with, you know, some other nations? I don't want to, you know, I don't want to name them because, you know, it's not relevant really. What's relevant, if tomorrow I think the Winter Olympics begin, do we have the Olympic motto, participation is important, or do we have the motto of a world championship, winning is important? If participation is important, we're great. You know, we are participating. You ended up in an Olympics. Even if you're number 60, it's great. You're an Olympic, you've someone who's participated in Olympics. But if you want a medal, if you want to be on the podium, if you want your national anthem to be played, it's a very different type of a game. And, you know, sorry, but I'm not here to just make that, you know, sugar-coated in any way. Everyone else, welcome to do so. I have very little interest these days to sugarcoat anything. We have to put emphases on education, research, commercialization, but starting with education, because whatever competitive advantages we have, it's minimal. It's small. It's really not scalable. You know, we have successful companies. Kudos to them. They've created even in these conditions. But that's not abnormal. You know, you go to a desert and you find oases. You go to a desert and you find water wells. So it's not unusual to find. But if that's what we're seeking, we're great. You know, we're doing tremendously well. You know, we'll find some wells and we'll find some oases, and we can always applaud that. But if we're really creating an ocean, if you know, seafront, ocean, whatever it may be, a lot of work needs to be done. AI, look, we just did a study. I did a presentation to the government and media early this week, on Monday actually, on artificial intelligence. We're number 57 on AI index, global index. We actually did a study last year. Armenia was not included in that index last year, but our numbers were almost identical to the numbers that the actual index did. So we're number 57. There is a path for us to get to top 20, you know, to the rising stars, and we've charted that. We looked at this and we said, we looked at education, we looked at talent creation, we looked at R&D, research and development, and we looked at commercialization, infrastructure, and all of this. Also, we've done a return on the investment, risk analysis, and whatever, to see what it would look like if we were to say, all right, if we want to spend the next 5 years and see if we can bring Armenia into top 20 in AI, what it would require. And the best scenario, there was 3 scenarios we've identified, and I made that presentation on Monday. The scenario that we looked at will require somewhere about $300 million additional expenditure for the next 5 years in this space, in the space of talent creation, R&D, as well as commercialization, for us to have that chance to be in top 20, to be something like Sweden or so when it comes to creation of AI, which is really not at all a big expenditure, not at all a big focus, that you need a large deviation from focus for you to be able to do so. If we have that type of it, now that is a competitive advantage in a way, that you can spend on a national level $300 million on one vertical in the science and to become to get into top 20. That's not easily done. It's not going to be available for many states that they can spend $300 million and they'll get there. We have that potential. We'll be able to get there if we do so. There's about 50, 60 million additional expenditures on preparing the talent for that space, about 60 million on research, about 70 million on development, and about 150 million or so on commercialization. So this is all doable. This is really not pipe smoke. This is not a pipe dream. This is really doable. Now the question is, we as a foundation, we can do our part. For us to try to bring in all $300 million into this is going to be an extreme challenge. We'll do our part. We'll try, whatever, do or die type of a thing. We'll do our part. But here, we need to come in as a state into this game and say, as a state, can we move this forward deliberately, right? We say this is a focus. And this is important because you mentioned number of scientific disciplines, for instance. In many areas, there is clear leaders in that space. In here, when it comes to expenditure, when it comes to talent creation and what have you, no one can compete with the US. Second is China, and really no one can compete with China outside of US. Everyone else is somewhere there, But there is really, when it comes to artificial intelligence as a scientific vertical, you can't say that those that are in lead are so far ahead of you that you cannot catch up, because even those that are ahead, that are spending billions and billions of dollars in this space, they've only scratched the surface of it. It's just the tip of the iceberg. What's out there, we still don't know. We as a society, and I'm not talking about Armenia, we as a global society, we still don't understand that path quite well, how we're going to get to that level of intelligence. Which means, there could be a kid here at the loft, or sitting somewhere at the loft, or sitting at Impact Hub, or somewhere, or at Tumo Labs, and they have that switch that turns on, and many things change. But for that, you need to have so much focus, so much deliberate actions for you to be able to land on opportunities of that nature. That I believe we can, and I believe we should. And if you say where we could have a compatible advantage, I would say that's the vertical we could and we should.
At the base of an innovative society, you already said it and many times, but I will repeat it, is cutting edge education and investment in education and research. We recently talk a lot, and after the war, about GIDUJ. This is called the Power of Science Initiative. They are lobbying the government to increase funding for science. The percentage of government support to science in Armenia is currently below 1%, even though there were some improvements. Anyways, the number of scientists, also we talked about that in Armenia, has decreased tremendously. So you yourself, how do you take these challenges? These are institutional challenges. So how does FAST take on these challenges?
Well, we created this granting scheme called Advanced STEM Research Grant. We give out approximately $65,000 per grant per team of scientists in Armenia. This is an interesting program in such that it connects an international principal investigator, top-notch scientists from abroad, to small group of local scientists, about 5-6 PhDs, and we finance for about a year $65,000 for now. And it pays their salaries, it pays for publication fees. If they have IP, it pays for IP process. It pays for travel for them to go see the PI where they are. Currently, we have them in Germany and France for them to fly to their labs. But with COVID, it's become tricky. But then also bring our PIs to Armenia for several months for them to be able not to build the critical capacity, knowledge capacity, not only with those PhDs that they work, but with the broader community. Now we felt that 65,000 is great, and we're doing this in collaboration with local universities, also in collaboration of the universities where our scientists are. We're doubling this, about $125,000 each grant, and we have this gala dinner in Los Angeles on March 31st, where We're expected to raise funds, hopefully enough funds that we can do 10 of these grants. That will be about $1.2 million or so, $1.2 million, $1.5 million that we will, hopefully we will raise at the gala or throughout the year for us to launch 10 of these grants. That will mean we will have 10 different teams that would connected to international principal investigators, high-level principal investigators from, be it in the United States, France, UK, Germany, whatever it may be, but they're connected to a local group of PhDs, and their salaries with this new format will be at least, for senior level, will be at least 50% higher than the norm in Armenia, and for junior levels, at least 3 times higher than the norm in Armenia. So we're attempting to give them as much as the base salary would be, let's say, in the IT sector, for them not to jump ship. Those that are really intrigued, that want to do scientific discovery, for them to stay in the space of science and continue doing scientific discovery. So the way I'm answering your question is we're bringing new resources to complement whatever the government is doing. A lot more needs to be done. Our intention is over the next 5 years, if we can increase this to about 100 grants of this nature. Ani, this may change the narrative when it comes to scientific discovery in Armenia. In 5 years, if we're able to put 100 teams like this, that means we have 100 principal investigators from outside of Armenia connected to local researchers, about 500-600 of them, who are connected to local universities, be it Yerevan State University, with whom we are already have 2 grants that we're organizing, be it with Polytechnic and others. They will connect with these high-ranking scientists and their universities for them to do joint publications. They take full credit, these entities. Outside of fast giving the grant, our name appears nowhere. It's just financial resources that we're bringing into. We're not taking credit in publications. We're not taking anything when it comes to IP rights. None of this is part of our purview. The only impact that we want to bring here is additional resources and modality on how our scientists can collaborate with international principal investigators. Provided we're successful over 5 years for us to have 100 of these grants, that would mean at least half of scientists who would be in STEM, for instance, could be part of this program. On a national level, to have any kind of a program that could contribute to about half of your population in that space, that's pretty significant. That also will give inspiration to those who want to get into scientific research and thinking, if I get to my PhD level, what am I going to do? How would I do the research? Is there funding? They'll know that something of this nature increase. And I would recommend and I would commend many of our partners in that space to establish similar programs. We're fully open and inviting for us to collaborate on this. And we do have a number of partners that we're collaborating with on this. And hopefully, again, our gala will be successful for us to be able to raise the necessary funding for us to scale this. But programs of this nature, I think, will make that type of a shift, that type of a addition to what's being done on a national, on the government side, for us to complement those efforts and add significant value.
And then you just talked about all the foundation's effort in all direction, what is being done to institutionalize change, whether we are talking about education or research or innovation. And it is not small task also to bring the best and the brightest brains, scientists from abroad to Armenia. Whether it be short or long-term collaboration, but what is FAST doing to institutionalize their long-term involvement, engagement in Armenia?
Well, this granting scheme is for 2 to 4 years, for instance. Each grant is for 2 to 4 years. This establishes that type of a relationship between international scientists and Armenia. Which is a critical way for them to learn about the capacities that exist here, but also contribute to scientific development that's taking place in Armenia. So that's a very good and one clear way you can do something of this nature. There are other things also need to be taken into consideration for long-term engagement or for scientists who want to come to Armenia. Living standards is critical for these people to want to make a move to Armenia, right? They're going to be assessing whether, let's say, doing scientific research in Boston, doing some scientific research in Los Angeles, Paris, London, Berlin, Tokyo, Seoul, Beijing, Shanghai, and Yerevan are competitive. We're not talking about only diaspora Armenian scientists. We're talking about high-level scientific interest to come and work in Armenia. In order for those things to happen, we need to somehow match everything, when it comes to our environment, when it comes to greenery, air pollution, health system, visa issues, taxations. There's so many elements that need to be done, and we play some role in some of these parts. We as a foundation, we don't have unlimited resources, both human and financial, for us to be involved in every aspect of it. And our partners are constantly speaking or doing contributing with other through other mechanisms in supporting these types of changes in Armenia. But those are critical elements to also look into this. Not only look at, let's say, those three verticals: education, research, and commercialization opportunities, but also living opportunities. Human first lives, first eats, sleeps. These are very, very important things. And then to say, are we competitive there as well? Do we have environments where someone from MIT would leave, say, what, I'm tired of Boston, tired of MIT, and I want to move to Armenia because Armenia offers. We need to define what that thing is that Armenia offers outside of just, let's say, those work opportunities that we can offer them through either this granting scheme or other financial means.
And the last question, the foundation is celebrating its 5th anniversary. Have the goals of FAST over these 5 years changed?
Of course, we evolve constantly. Look, when we started, we had a very different type of a political landscape in Armenia. That changed very quickly. And then we had a very different global landscape, and that changed with COVID very quickly. And then we had COVID and different type of a political landscape, and then war happens. So that changes many things further. And if you don't adapt, you don't adjust, I think the survivability of any kind of an entity becomes questionable. So we've certainly evolved, given the reality on ground in Armenia, but also around the world. Can we travel? Can we? We were building partnerships in East Asia with Indonesia, Malaysia, in East Africa with Rwanda, Kenya, and Tanzania. We had delegations from those countries come to Armenia. We were there for us to do collaborative work in the space of artificial intelligence, both research and commercialization with these countries, as well as educational programs. All of that got scrapped. I landed in Yerevan on March 14 from Jakarta. Both Jakarta and Armenia closed down on March 15, just day after my landing, and we had this partnership in place that we were going to sign off on May 25th. Indonesia still hasn't opened. So those things change many things for us because it's a huge market opportunity for Armenia. It's a nation of nearly 300 million people. So those things, as they come in, you say, all right, it was going to work. It's not going to work now. COVID changes. What happened after the war, during the war? So those changes, you take that, and then as your programs evolve or as they advance, you evolve them for them to still fit. And the most important element is for you to ensure that your constituency still benefits, given all of those logistical challenges that pop up time and time again. And I think within those, we could have possibly accomplished a lot more. But again, I can only speculate about that because in hindsight, everything is 2020. No pun intended. But we don't have that opportunity for us to go back and change a thing or two. So we learn as we grow. Surely we could have done certain things better. And in other areas, actually, we've had successes that we didn't imagine. So I think it balances itself. There's a lot more work for us to do for the next 20 years. We realized that because our intention was to turn Armenia into top 10 innovation country by 2041, 50 years after the Third Republic's inception. We're on that path. It's not an easy, it's an arduous road, but we're optimistic. We're here, we're challenging ourselves, we're challenging those around us. We've got amazing people working at FAST. People really love the mission of the organization. I'm very proud of them. I'm also honored and privileged to work with our founding team, with our partners. It's a tough, arduous work for you to become competitive. Look, if we give an example of sports, you've got to work 8 to 10 hours for you to do that, 10-second jump, to do that 100-meter, 10-second run. You spend countless hours, nights, diets, workouts, psychological preparations, and it only takes 10 seconds. And if you didn't wake up, with the right attitude that day, you're going to miss that opportunity. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we need to be sharp. We need to remain diligent. I think I'm not going to speak about we need to unify. We need to do this. This has become an old adage. I think as long as we're all running in the same direction, we'll be collaborating.
Well, thank you, Mr. Orujyan, for this talk, for this conversation. Thank you for watching and continue to follow CivilNet.